I'm Kathleen from the Saskatoon Zoo Society. I'm so glad you could join me today on this Adaptations tour at the Saskatoon Forestry Farm Park and Zoo. Let's get going. Hey, did you ever realize just how important thumbs are for us? They allow us to hold things, they allow us to grab things. They're a really important adaptation that humans have. Our animals here at the zoo have a whole bunch more adaptations that they use as well. So come on, let's join and see what the animals are up to today. Wolves, like Buddy here, are highly social animals. They form packs when they want to hunt. And that packing up is a behavioral adaptation that wolves use when they hunt. Now, if I was Buddy, I'd probably look at taking down smaller animals. I think it would just be much easier that way. But not Buddy and his pack mates. They're going to go after really large land animals like bison, wapiti, and even moose. Now, that's not all that they use. They have an amazing physical adaptation, their acute sense of smell. And that sense of smell allows them to zero in on the sick, the injured, the weak, or even the young of a herd and separate them away from the herd so that they can focus in on their hunt. If you look at our pet dogs, they have the same similar traits. They can use their noses. So when we look at things like the police services, border security, or even in the medical industry, dogs can sniff out narcotics, they can sense when you're about to have a seizure, or they can even find a missing and locate a missing person. Really amazing work by their noses. Now, I love that wolves are highly social and work together as a group, but the next animal we're going to go look at is actually quite solitary. Cougars, like Malcolm here, are solitary hunters, unless of course it's advantageous to work together. So if you're a solitary hunter, you've got to be working in a certain way in order to sneak up on your prey. And cougars are really good at that. They'll blend into their surroundings and do a surprise attack on their prey. Now, one of the cool features that I really love is when the cougars jump up to get their food. Here at the zoo, you're going to see Malcolm jump up onto the platform and leap back down to get its food. Now, you can't do that unless you have a physical adaptation that helps you balance. They have a really long tail. Now, when you think about their jumps, imagine the largest school bus that you've ever been on. A cougar can stand from ground level right next to that school bus, jump up and over the school bus, or stand at the back and leap all the way to the front. And that's not even as high or as far as cougars can jump. It's really pretty amazing. Now, once they have their food, they're going to use their other physical adaptation, their sharp claws. And in cats, they have retractable claws. Well, most cats. I say most because the cheetah doesn't have retractable claws. And that's because it needs to keep their running cleats on all the time when it's chasing antelope down the grasslands. But for the rest of the cats, they have retractable claws. And what that means is they can retract their claws in and keep them sharp. So when they're walking, they don't wear them down like, say, the wolves would a little bit. The cougars are razor sharp. So they've got razor sharp claws to hunt their prey as well as to climb trees. Now, shh. Did you hear Malcolm roar? Oh, I'm glad you said no, because they can't. They don't have the adaptation in their throat to allow them to make that noise. So we'll hear whistling sounds or even the occasional purr from Malcolm. Now, these are really large predators that we just showed you. We're going to go and take a look at some prey animals next. Dante here is the large male of our bison herd. Now, I said the word bison, but the Michif peoples would have used li bufflu. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but what I'm trying to get across is that there are two names for this animal, bison and buffalo, and it doesn't really matter which one you want to use. Here at the zoo, we use bison, and that's because buffalo can actually refer to the European water buffalo. So we'll use bison today in the tour. Now, bison, remember we were talking about the wolves and how they like to take down members of the bison herd? That's not easy when you've got somebody like Dante over there. And the wolves know that. There's no way a wolf pack is going to attempt to take down a large bison like Dante. That's far too dangerous. But Dante does have to worry about his herd members. So he has a behavioral adaptation where he'll herd up so that he keeps the females and the young safe in that herd. Strength in numbers is what they're looking for. Now, this is a plant eater. albeit a very large plant eater. And when they eat, being so large, you'd think that's a lot of effort to lower and raise that head every time they eat. But they have a physical adaptation for that. Their head is actually positioned a little bit lower on their body, so they don't have to raise and lower as far. But once your head is down, look what happens. I tip my head down. Where do my eyes go? My eyes go to the ground, but not with bison. They have eyes on the side of their head. So when they're tipping down to eat, they can see what's going on around them. Now, once they have that food in their mouth, they're going to take the really large, flat molars at the back, grind up that plant material. But then there's a little bit of a problem. That plant material is really fibrous and dense. And in order to get all the nutrition from that material, you need to have a specialized stomach. So bison have a 4-chambered stomach to deal with that type of material. Now, I love the soft, thick coat of a bison. It was something that the indigenous peoples would have used to keep them warm, and a whole bunch of other uses for that coat that I'm sure you all have talked about in school for years. But little insects can be a little bit of a pest when it comes to that fur coat. They love to burrow in it. But bison have a behavioral adaptation that they do to deal with that. They will wallow in the dirt, or you'll see them swat their tail at the bugs. You'll probably see that on the video today of them moving their tail around. Now, one last thing I want to mention. Did you notice those small little legs of the bison? I would think for a large animal, they would have much larger legs. But that's not the case. Those smaller legs lower their center of gravity and help keep them really stable. They're also fairly fast. I wouldn't have thought that. But what we see is the babies running out, then the females in behind those babies, and then the big male sort of lumbering in behind. But don't mistake that for being slow. They're quite a fast animal, but not as fast as the next animal we're about to see. Most people think of the cheetah when they think of the fastest land animal, and they'd be correct. But most people forget that here in North America, we actually have a super fast animal called the pronghorn. Now, they're named the pronghorn because they have a really unique horn. It has a prong on its horn. I know, excellent name, right? Now, pronghorns lived at the time when there were saber-toothed tigers. Can you imagine trying to get away from a saber-toothed tiger? You better have some special adaptations that allow you to get away quickly. And one of those adaptations is those long, skinny legs that you see behind me. Those long legs allow them to get away really fast. But there also has to be a few other things going on, because these guys can maintain speeds of 50 to 70 kilometers for around an hour. They can get up to top speeds of about 100 kilometers an hour, which is rivaling the cheetah for speed. The cheetah's just a little bit faster, but the cheetah can't maintain the speeds that the pronghorn can maintain. So in order to maintain those speeds, we see a really large heart and lungs that allow an extra amount of oxygen to get into their bloodstream that powers their muscles to run really quickly. Now, this is a prey animal, so you'll also notice that their eyes are positioned on the side of their head. What I really like about pronghorn, though, is their rump. Now, when we see Kelly enter into their enclosure here, you'll notice that they're going to be on alert. Now, it's not that they find Kelly overly dangerous, but it's just something new today that's entering into their pen. So what they're going to do is they're going to puff up their butt and they're going to flash it, just like a flashlight. So they're going to flash that white rump, and it signals to the rest of the herd that there may be danger or just something new around, and they might have to take off sprinting. So pronghorn are extremely efficient at getting away from their predators. Some little prey animals, though, have a really hard time with the next predator animal. Luna, the great gray owl here at the zoo, is the predator that I was talking about. She's a carnivore, and she's a raptor. Now, raptor just means a meat-eating bird. And in order to eat meat as a bird, you have to have a ton of special adaptations. And my favorite one with owls is the way their feathers are designed. Their feathers are designed to be silent in flight, a little bit different than, say, our hawks or our eagles or our falcons, where they make a lot of noise. Owls are masters at sneaking up on you. Now, when they've snuck up on you, they've got to be able to find their prey. So they're locating their prey with their eyes. Their eyes are actually more triangular shaped, which means they've got this really large movie screen on the back of their eye, which allows them to see things much larger than you and I do. Now, when we think of looking for an animal, we don't always think that owls are doing that because they're hunting primarily at night. Yes, I know, owls can hunt during the day, but if they're hunting at night, they're going to use their ears more. They have a special adaptation for that. Their ears are positioned a little bit differently. Have you ever seen a dog that's trying to figure out where the sound is coming from? Say a siren is going off down your street, and they're triangulating with their head, so they'll tilt it side to side. We don't see our owls doing that, and that's because one ear is positioned up and facing a little bit upwards, and the other one is a little bit lower and facing more down, allowing them to triangulate without ever moving their head. But if they do move their head, that's a cool thing to see, because you and I, as mammals, have 7 vertebrae in your neck. Yes, there are mammals that do have 6, but almost all of us have 7. And owls will be able to move their head from this shoulder all the way around to the other shoulder, a full 270 degrees. I can just do this and this. Pretty boring compared to an owl. Now, once they've zeroed in on their target, say a mouse for example, they've got to be able to eat it really efficiently. And so they use their knife and fork. Okay, I'm joking. They don't have a knife and fork, but they do have talons that they use and a sharp, hooked, curved beak. Every bird has a specially adapted beak or bill for whatever they're eating. If you're a meat-eating bird, you want that sharp, hooked, curved beak in order to rip your food apart. Now, once they have that prey animal and they're going to swallow it, they don't want to eat the fur, the feathers, and the bones of the animals that they're eating. So they're going to form a pellet in their gizzard, which is located in their chest area. Not for all birds, but for some birds, it's located in their chest area. And they're going to form a pellet, and they're going to cough up the stuff that they don't want, kind of like taking out your garbage for us humans. Now, we're going to see some other carnivores and their special adaptations in just a bit. Mastea here is a huge, large carnivore at the zoo. But would you be surprised to learn that they're more of an omnivore like you and I? Their diet is plant and meat-based, especially the brown bears that existed right here in Saskatchewan. Their diet was about 80% plant material. Now, that doesn't mean that if a bear lived in a region where there was an overabundance of meat, that they wouldn't choose meat every single day. Of course they would. You need to grow big like this bear. Meat is a good way to do that. But their diet is structured to eat plants and meat. And we know that from looking at their teeth. Their teeth are very similar to yours and mine, with the exception of their canine teeth are much larger at the front. But they have the flatter, I should say, molars at the back, just similar to the way our teeth at the back are. Now, that's not where the similarities end with them. They walk plantigrade, just like you and I, which means their heel touches down first and we roll onto our toes, making our whole foot connect the ground. Most animals raise up on their toes when they walk. It's kind of like walking on your tippy toes. Now, when you look at Mastea here, you'll notice that he has a very large hump. And that's because he needs to power his very strong claws because they need to do some digging. If they're looking at eating grasslands plants, the roots are very long and low into the ground. They got to dig those out with those sharp, powerful claws. But they also might be digging up prairie dogs or ground squirrels. Again, you need to dig deep to get them down in their deep, deep tunnels. That's where that hump comes into play. It is a powerful muscle that helps power the food out of the ground for them. A wonderful carnivore. We're going to go see a few more animals right away. So we're here at the Meerkat house, another one of those digging animals, kind of like the bears, but these guys spend a lot more of their time digging. Now, meerkats will spend their time underground. It's a lot safer there to be underground. And they have a myriad of tunnel systems underground. And they have special rooms even under there where they have like a kitchen area, a nursing area, a place where they go to the bathroom, very similar to your own house. But when the sun comes out, especially in the morning, our meerkats like to come above ground. And they need to have a bunch of adaptations that will help keep them safe. So one thing that they do is that they have a light belly that keeps them nice and warm so that they can soak up the sun to warm up. Now that doesn't keep them safe, but what keeps them safe is the sentry. So one of the meerkats in the mob will be designated as a sentry. Now these change over all the time, so it's not necessarily the same one all the time. But if you're designated the sentry, you're going to climb up on a rock, you're going to climb up on a termite mound, or get up on a tree, and you're going to look out over the whole mob and ensure their safety. There's things like raptors, wild dogs, even venomous snakes that could be coming around the ground that could harm our meerkats. And what the sentry does is provide vocalizations for the mob to warn them. And they are very specific in those vocalizations. So if it's a snake, they'll have one vocalization. If it's a raptor flying overhead, they'll make another sound. They even make a sound to say, hey, everything's clear, keep playing, keep digging. Now there's a couple other physical adaptations that a meerkat has. You may notice that they can stand straight up. Now usually that's reserved for animals that walk plantigrade, like we saw with the bears, because it allows us to put a whole foot down. When it comes to meerkats and they want to stand up and take a good look at what's going on in the desert, they utilize their tail. They'll put their tail out behind them like a kickstand, and that keeps them upright. And then when they're standing up there, they might get a little bit of extra sun in their eyes. But don't worry, they've got their sunglasses on. They've got really dark black fur around their eyes. You may have seen sports people do this, where they rub black underneath their eyes. It's to get rid of the glare of the sunshine. It enables them to keep their eyes safe and not allow them to burn. Now, speaking of safe, there's safety in numbers. Meerkats will live in fairly large mobs of up to around 30 members. Now these are close-knit groups. As you can see here at the zoo, we have a wall up between our two mobs, and that's because they're not from the same family group. They're not really kind to having new family members, or outside family members, I should say, come and join the group. Now these guys are carnivores, just like the bears that we saw. But one of the things that these guys will eat are scorpions. And I don't know how much you know about scorpions, but scorpions are venomous. And these guys, there's a few reports that state that meerkats have a little bit of immunity to the venom of a scorpion, but ultimately it comes down to their behavior. How do they hunt a scorpion efficiently? And in order to do that, they will quickly run in, rip off the tail, spit it out for a second, roll the scorpion in sand to get rid of any last traces of venom, and then eat the scorpion. They'll even go back for the tail as a tasty dessert treat. Now these guys spend their time in mobs to stay safe. My next animal also stays in groups, but also utilizes the height of the trees in order to stay safe. Let's go see that animal next. But nobody climbs trees better than monkeys do. We're over here at the Goldies Monkeys enclosure. Now they're sometimes called Goldies marmosets. And in order to stay safe, they have to live in small family groups of about 6 to 10 individuals. Here at the zoo, we have Mom Leah with her 3 daughters, Sydney, Kelly, and Evie. Now you'll see them leaping around, and their leaping ability is quite phenomenal. They can leap about 4 meters horizontally. Now typically when we see monkeys leaping like that, they'll grab a hold of the branch with their feet, but also with their tail, because we see monkeys having a prehensile tail. Now with the Goldies monkeys, they don't have that. So they have to have another feature in order to allow them to grab a hold of the trees. And what they have is nice sharp claws to dig into the tree bark as they land. Now we'll also see these guys position themselves on the trees a little bit lower sometimes, about 5 meters off the ground, which isn't really low, but for them, they're searching out one of their favorite foods to eat, mushrooms. kind of an animal after my own heart. I like mushrooms too. But these guys are one of the only monkeys that I can think of that will eat mushrooms. Now these guys will scent mark, and that's a communication tool to mark their territory, but also to ask to be groomed or when they're looking for a mate. Now we're gonna go over and see another animal that also uses scent marking. We're here at the dingo enclosure with Yuki and Maple. Yuki's right here in front of me and Maple's just back there a little bit. I can recognize them because Maple has a little white stripe down the tip of her nose there. Now their names are pretty unique here at the Saskatoon Forestry Farm Park and Zoo. Yuki is named after the eucalyptus tree of Australia and Maple after the maple tree in Canada. And because they were born in Australia and brought to Canada, we thought those were some pretty cute names for them. Now you'll notice that our dingoes have a fairly light coat color, and that's because it helps keep them cool in the hot desert regions. If they live a little bit up in the forested areas in Australia, they will have a little bit of a darker coat, just to make sure that they can keep some of that warmth in them as well. Now these guys have really neat adaptations. One of my favorite ones is their ability to climb trees. So when they climb up the tree, they have a little bit of extra wrist movement that we don't see in other members of the dog family. They can also do something kind of special with their necks. They can rotate it about 180 degrees, which is something you won't see your dogs that are able to do. Our wolves, our coyotes, our foxes, and even your common dog at home is unable to move it as far as the dingoes can do. So hopefully in the video you'll see them climbing up their tree and getting a treat from the zookeepers. The other thing that you won't hear is you won't hear them do a lot of barking. They'll do a little bit of that whining, but they will howl just like our wolves will. And that's to communicate with their pack. There might be a missing member that they're needing to locate. They might be communicating to the young of the pack, or they might just be communicating their territory to other predators or that are around. Now we see dingoes hunt solitary. However, they will form packs when they have to hunt large animals like kangaroos, for example. They will do a little bit of scent marking as well to mark their territory, just like our members of the wolf family here in Canada. Now, that's one of our little guys. Let's go and see another animal here at the zoo. Now, most people would practice social distancing when they deal with a porcupine, and that's probably a really good idea. But Georgia here at the zoo is really used to me. Now, I'm not sure if it's me or if it's actually the food, but either way, I'll take it because she's a real cutie here at the zoo. One of the reasons why we would practice social distancing is because of their fur. But most people don't realize that porcupines actually have 3 layers of fur. We're only going to see 2 today because she shed one of those out. These hairs up on the top here are actually her guard hairs. They do mimic the look of a quill, which makes them very dangerous to animals that might want to eat them. Underneath the guard hairs is going to be a layer of soft winter fur. Now, of course, it's not winter, so we won't see that nice soft fur that's underneath there. And then when I pull that back, we have the opportunity to see her quills really clearly. Her quills are from the tip of her forehead all the way to the tip of her tail. But that's really important fur for her, are those quills. Now that is just a modified hair. It's a hair that's got a lot of protein called keratin in it. And that keratin is what keeps it nice and hard. Now you and I both have some keratin. We have a little bit of keratin in our hair, a little bit on our skin, and we also have a lot of keratin on our fingernails. And it makes it nice and hard. Now the great thing about a quill is that not only is it hair, but it's barbed. So when it goes to stick into something, it anchors in like a fish hook, which is different than other fur. We also got some great birds that are singing to us here today as well. Now, when these quills come out, a lot of people think that they shoot, but they don't shoot their quills out because they're just not heavy enough to do that. So in order for them to come out, the porcupine either has to make contact with you, or a predator in her case, or she has to make contact with her beautiful tail where she's got some of her longest quills in there. One of the things that's really unique about being the second largest rodent in North America, after the beaver of course, is that she has some amazing teeth on her body. I don't know if you just saw those when she took a bite there, but her teeth are orange in color, not white like yours and mine. There is a bit of white, it's on the back end of it. And on the back side of her teeth is a softer enamel, which enables her to wear down the back side of her teeth so that she has almost like a chisel-like tool when she's chewing the delicious bark that she likes to eat. Now, I always say that porcupines, they maybe like to eat pancakes, but of course, porcupines can't make their own pancakes. But what they are after is the really sweet, juicy substance that we pour on our pancakes, the syrup. And that syrup is found just underneath the bark of a tree. So she utilizes those really strong teeth that are iron coated, that's what gives it that orange color, that allows her to chew the bark and get at the phloem tubes that supplies her with the syrup that she loves so much. Now Georgia here is going to constantly look for food, so I'm going to give her a nice orange carrot, very similar to her orange teeth. I don't know if you saw those sharp claws too when she lifted up there. Porcupines are amazing at climbing trees. She can get up there much faster than I can. Now typically they're slow, but when they climb trees, they're quite fast. The other thing that's neat about this particular rodent is the way in which they reproduce. Now with rodents, we will see them reproduce very often and in large numbers. Think of mice, for example. But with porcupines, they might have one baby every year or one baby every other year. Quite a bit different than what we normally see with rodents. Now, Georgia here is still hungry, so I'm going to keep feeding her, and then we'll get on to the next animal at the zoo. It's my hair. Salamanders, like our western tiger's salamanders here, have been on planet Earth for almost 350 million years. And over that time, they've developed a lot of adaptations for their survival. One of the neat things is how they will become in their adult form. So like our salamanders here today, they have become air-breathing salamanders with lungs, but they don't always have to be. They could be remaining in water with gills, very similar to the axolotl that we have here at the zoo, or they could even be adults, which are a little bit cannibalistic. Yes, that does mean they eat each other, but that's only in times when food is scarce. But it's kind of a neat adaptation that they can have this different adult form. Now you'll also probably notice that I'm wearing gloves today, and that's because salamanders have a fairly permeable skin, which means it allows things to get down and into their bloodstream. Salamanders are an excellent indicator of water quality because the fact that pollution and other contaminants can get down in through their skin. If we have a healthy population of salamanders or amphibians in general, we know that more than likely our water is safe. If we don't see a healthy population of amphibians, then there's a good possibility that there's some contaminants in our water, which is something that we don't want. So it's really great if we live in an area where there's a healthy population of amphibians. Now, like amphibians, they do have a foul-tasting substance that they have on their body so that predators, for the most part, won't eat them. They also do a great job of camouflaging in the ground with their markings and their coloration. Lots of times, salamanders will spend most of their time underground. But they also need to be near water so they can maintain that slimy substance on their skin so that they don't dry out. That's one thing that our salamanders do not want. Now, today, one of the things that I want to do with you is show you what I think is one of their coolest adaptations. And it has to do with their eyeballs. Now, they have little ridges for teeth in their mouth, but they don't really chew up their food as much as, say, you and I would or other carnivores would. So they're going to use their long tongue. Now, sometimes people think that salamanders and frogs, they have this great sticky tongue. Their tongue is no different than yours and mine. Imagine yourself eating popcorn. If you had dry popcorn in a bowl, don't put any butter or anything in it, but if you just had dry popcorn and you stick your tongue into that popcorn bowl, chances are a piece of popcorn is sticking to your tongue. And that's because a dry surface is sticking to a wet surface. Very similar to a dry bug sticking to a wet tongue on my salamander here. But that's not where their adaptation stops. They're going to have these amazing eyeballs that stick out of their head a little bit. And they're going to push those eyeballs in when they eat their bugs. So that's what we're going to do right away here. All right, so just like promised, we're going to feed our salamanders today. He's going to get a tasty little cricket, and we're going to see if we can see the eyeball push for the salamander here. Hopefully they're hungry. Ooh. Now if we focus in on the eyes, there was a good one. That was a double eye push for this one. This is Victor here that I'm holding right now. Oh, and he did another eye push for us right there. Pretty cool little adaptation that our tiger salamanders have. Now watching them eat crickets was the coolest thing ever, I find, for salamanders. But the last adaptation I want to talk about is how they handle hibernation. Now, like most cold-blooded animals, you'd want to go way down underground below the frost line so that your body doesn't freeze. But I think somebody forgot to tell salamanders that. And what they do is that they just bury under enough to sort of hide themselves, but they don't actually go below the frost line, which means their outside of their body freezes. Now, I don't know about you, but you and I wouldn't be able to handle that if our body froze. So they've got a special adaptation to handle that. Now, there's two ways in which salamanders and frogs can do that. They can be either a freeze-tolerant salamander, or they can be a freeze-avoidant salamander. And what we find our salamanders here in Saskatchewan are freeze-avoidant. And that means they have a special sugar substance that allows all their insides to stay warm. It's a glucose substance. Think of like an antifreeze for your car, for example. It keeps the insides warm and flowing while the outside of their body freezes. And then they'll come back awake in the springtime. So many cool adaptations for such a tiny little animal like the salamanders. It's one of my favorites when we're talking about adaptations. During our tour today, we met a lot of animals that had some amazing adaptations that help keep them alive. Whether it's a physical adaptation like our thumbs or a behavioral adaptation like getting into packs, all of those adaptations help to keep the animals safe. I'm so happy that you joined me here today at the Saskatoon Forestry Farm Park and Zoo, and I hope to see you out here soon.